La Escuela de Humanidades y Educación del Tecnológico de Monterrey en Campus Puebla les da la más cordial bienvenida a su podcast Atrévete a Saber, el nuevo espacio de divulgación del trabajo de investigación realizado por parte de los profesores de la Escuela de Humanidades y Educación. Les saludamos sus anfitriones, Rodrigo Esparza,
Connie Castillo
y Andrés Barradas.
Bienvenidos y comenzamos. Atrévete a Saber es un espacio de divulgación del conocimiento generado por nuestros colegas dentro de la EGE como parte de su labor investigativa. El saber no solo nos permite conocer el mundo, sino también generar una reflexión crítica sobre este y sobre las diversas aristas de la dimensión simbólica del humano. Demos, pues, al conocimiento ese cariz de atrevimiento, de aventura para ir más allá de lo inmediato y evidente y construir una nueva forma de concebir la realidad que permita dar nuestra ilusión humana de plenitud existencial. Hello, how are you? I hope you are so well. Welcome to Dare to Know. It's a great honor to us to receive this time Professor Nilima Bhat, who is Distinguished Professor in Gender and Conscious Leadership Business School, EGADE Business School, and School of Humanities and Education. You are very welcome, Nilima.
So nice to be with you, Rodrigo and Andrea.
And welcome to Puebla and welcome to Puebla campus. We are very excited to join us this morning. We're also having the presence of the student, Andrea Flores, who's going to have part in this dialogue with Professor Bhat.
Hi, thanks for having me again.
Nilima Bhat is an original thinker, initiator, an expert in leadership, organizational culture, conscious business, and self-awareness for work-life balance based on Indian wisdom and wellness tradition. She is also an advocate of gender equality and women in leadership. Nilima worked for over 10 years for renowned brands as ESPN, Star Sports, Philips India, and ITC Wellcome Group in areas of corporate communications and PR. As the founder of director of Shakti Leadership and an expert in leadership, gender equality, and well-being, Nilima has given workshops and training in leadership for Microsoft, Whole Foods Market, Tata, Society General Bank, Vodafone, and YPO, as well as academic institutions and organizations like the Indus International Schools and SKS Microfinance. Nilima Bhat has written 2 books, Shakti Leadership, Embracing Feminine and Masculine Empowering Business, and My Cancer is Me, The Journey from Illness to Wholeness. They both establish an integrated approach of DIE and B. This is diversity, equality, inclusion, and belonging, leadership, well-being, and resilience. The book Shakti Leadership, Embracing Feminine and Masculine Power in Business was co-written with fellow faculty of excellence professor from Tecnológico de Monterrey, Rags Sisodia. It explains a type of leadership that is cooperative, creative, inclusive, empathetic, and assertive, which allows people to live and lead in balance and consciousness. She has a PG diploma, Social Communications Media by Sofia Polytechnic Mumbai, and Bachelor's in Science, Life Science, and Biochemistry by St. Xavier's College in Mumbai, India. On the other hand, Andrea Flores is a 5th semester communications student at the Tecnológico de Monterrey. In her academic, creative, and personal journey, she has been focused on interest in various topics such as storytelling, history, psychology, gender studies, and philosophy. She loves to generate and consume narratives that question the state of things, and loves to explore and gather knowledge and experience on new and unknown topics. She has interviewed academic figures as Mindy Sue or Richard Rogers. You're very welcome once again. Welcome, Andrea. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And as we start this broadcast, that is a kind of space to communicate knowledge. Why should we dare to know? Why should we dare to know?
Wow, we should dare to know, because if we don't know, we are simply victims of what happens with our life. And, life is not easy. There's always something crazy that's going to challenge us physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And if we do not know better as to why things are the way they are, we will simply be victims of our circumstances. And my whole work is to rise above that and to become creators of our life and to be able to live the life we deserve and to really fulfill all the potential that's inside us. And if we do not dare to know and dare to learn, how will we ever uncover the 8/9 of the iceberg that's underneath us? We only know the 1/9 of who we are. There is 8/9 underneath. And that's the deep unconscious, the subconscious. There's a whole body of knowledge, wisdom, knowing. If we don't know that, we're just like corks bobbing on the ocean and thrown around by storms.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to the first question. How should the notion of Shakti be understood?
There is a fuel, an energy, a creative evolutionary force that is innate to our experience, that is innate to the universe, right? Think about your nail grows without you having to do any work. Your food, your coffee you just had is getting digested without you having to do anything. The sun is spinning around, the planets are spinning around, galaxies are being born and they're dying. And think about the life on this planet. It began with molten lava. At some point, something intelligent created out of mineral plants, and something further created out of plants animals, and out of animals then came humans. Clearly, there is an evolutionary force at work, and it's intelligent, and it has intent, right? It seems to be heading us in some direction. That creative energy is called Shakti. Right? And in yoga, which is the tradition I follow, we look at this principle as the divine feminine, because it's the creative energy that brings forth life and nurtures life, sustains life, and evolves it or transforms it. So in yoga, we relate to Shakti as a child would relate to a mother. And in that building of a relationship, just like you build a relationship with a tree or a cat or a dog or a flower, you can actually learn to enter into relationship with Shakti. And that becomes such a joyful ride because you suddenly realize there is a creative intelligence that responds to your call and your conversation. And then you start living the mythopoetic life, where life is not just three-dimensional, rational. It becomes curious, creative, and that juiciness that comes to our life when we put on a mythopoetic lens and we make higher meaning and find deeper purpose. All that juicy energy is Shakti.
Okay, and having this in mind, and if we took the concept of Shakti and put it together with leadership, how we understand Shakti leadership?
I love that question. I truly believe it was an inspired moment when I felt I was given this insight that on one hand, I'm a leadership teacher, trainer, consultant in my day job. And then my personal path and practice to self-mastery was yoga and understanding Shakti. And then I realized we're talking about leaders having to become conscious. We want models for conscious leadership. I said, essentially, leaders have to become yogis and yoginis. They have to know what is their true power, what is their creative energy. They need to know how to tap into that. Then, when they become Shakti-full leaders and they follow Shakti leadership, then they do not need to fight for power over each other. And the whole game of this planet up until now, I went to your anthropology museum, and stunning as it was, every story was about this person killing that person, and it's so militaristic. And up until now, we've been playing a win-lose power game in leadership. And if leadership is about gaining power and exercising power, then I think it's time we woke up to the realization that it's not power over, because an eye for an eye is going to make the whole world blind, and we are poised at going extinct as a species because of this power over paradigm. We need a new power base. We need a true power base. That is Shakti. If a leader knows how to tap into his or her Shakti and know that it's infinite, there's enough for all, now you do power with, and you together have power to create the positive outcome needed.
Okay, thank you.
Wow. So, precisely talking about power, because today we understand power as the ability to perhaps control things, right? To control others, to control actions. Taking this into consideration in Shakti, how would you define power according to this philosophy?
This Shakti is power to create, power to evolve, power to transform, power to gather and create an inclusive system that is in harmony with all its elements, and that knows how to gather as it grows and not leap forward for individual success, leaving others behind. That is the strategy of a cancer cell. So to truly find the strategy that is a win-win, in which there's power for all, and each one, I basically say, if you look at the patriarchy, it's about masculine and male having power over everything else, and particularly all things female and feminine. I feel that time has come to hospice that power game, hospice a system like patriarchy, which is unequal power share, and midwife symphony, right? We're much like a symphony orchestra. Every unit in that symphony plays its integrity. In its integrity, it plays its unique instrument in its best possible way. But in the process, it creates a symphony that's grander than itself, right? So that is power for all and power with all. And then when you are moving Shakti in this way, in a very creative reciprocity in a system, then everyone wins, everyone matters. And then together there is an innate desire for creativity when you are with Shakti. You will never be bored. You want to create and have fun and do more and experience all possibilities that are potential in you. So that exercise, when you do a win-win, kind of a relationship or transaction in your leadership with everyone you are interacting with, and together you say, do we have power to drive change, make things better, find the creative, inclusive solutions that work for all, right? That would be the kind of power that is Shakti power.
Right. That's a really beautiful way of thinking about it, and I think it could, it could really help like society in general move forward. And I think, actually, interestingly, the thought of rethinking power is also Shakti in on itself, right?
Yes.
Because we are creating the new idea of what we should be like and what we should behave like. And yeah, it's really inspiring.
Thank you.
So around 3 years ago, approximately, at a Latin American conference of conscious capitalism, you mentioned in an interview that some concepts from yoga must be brought into leadership. What are those concepts you bring from yoga to leadership?
The first one would be the idea of dharma, right? Which is that each one of us has a essential truth of our being, and our life's purpose is to discover what that is and then live our life according to the truth of who we are, right? Find your dharma and then live your dharma, right? Which is find your unique truth, your unique gift that you're here to bring the world, and then stay true to that, stay on purpose with that, right? And your dharma is basically your swabhav, meaning your innate nature is what you have to bring to the world. So you don't pretend to be someone else. Don't put on a mask and follow someone else's leadership style. Discover who you are, what is the truth and gift of that, and that is your swabhav, that is your innate nature, and your dharma is to fulfill and manifest what you potentially are. So it's like an acorn has to become an oak tree. You can't try and become a willow or something else, right? So the idea of dharma also includes things like what is the right thing to do in any situation. And in leadership, that is critical because a leader is forever challenged with dilemmas. And it's not dilemma between the right thing and the wrong thing. It's dilemma between two good things, right? Do I follow task or do I take care of my relationships? Do I do what's urgent or do I focus on what's important, right? Is it about the me in this situation or is it about the we, right? Is it about strategy or is it about culture, No? So we are forever in leadership dilemmas. And dharma, the idea of knowing the dharma of a situation is to have the capacity to discern what is the right thing to do in that dilemma, right? So that's one idea that comes from yoga that we bring to Shakti leadership. The idea of wholeness, right? Which is that in order to come into our full Shakti, you need to be a whole person. Now, what is a whole person? We have the idea of the androgynous self. It's called the Ardhanarishwar. That inside every man, woman, and child, inside every unit of creation, we are equal parts masculine, equal parts feminine. The masculine in us, which is kind of shown as the right side of the figure, is the Shiva, which is our pure consciousness, still witness awareness. But that's not all we are. The left side is Shakti, which is its creative energy. So Shiva without Shakti is sterile, wouldn't create anything. It's just pure consciousness watching everything, but important. And then Shakti without Shiva would be chaos, because this energy just wants to spin and create and have fun and be uncontrolled. She only submits to the Shiva in us, which is the consciousness in us, right? So the idea that wholeness requires an inner wedding between our Shiva and our Shakti, our consciousness and our energy, right? Then you become whole, psychologically and biologically and at every level. What else? There are many ideas I've pulled from. One of the things we talk about in Shakti leadership is the idea of Purushartha, right? Which is, what is the pursuit of human life? Why are we here? What are we supposed to spend our time doing? Even that is laid out in yoga, saying, there are 4 things that you must work on to feel truly fulfilled as a human being. The first is dharma, which I just described. Know who you are and live your life, dharma. Next is artha, which is find meaningful work. Don't just do any job. Find work that is true, and you earn a good wage. You earn a good income. It's not by foul means, it's by fair means. And it's your dharma to earn money and support yourself. You can't be a parasite on your society, right? So that is artha. Then kama. You also have to go out there and find fulfilling relationships. Find love. Find a partner. Procreate. Give forth the gift of life. If you came because someone brought you forth, then you have a debt to life itself, which is bring life forth, so it continues, right? So kama, create that loving, healthy family and relationships and marriage and partnership, whatever. And the fourth is moksha. That is not enough to just, do your dharma and make your money and have happy babies and all that. Finally, it's about enlightenment, the quest for moksha, which is freedom. Break through out of this 3-dimensional limited reality and discover what the mystics and masters have discovered, which is unity consciousness, where you finally will break through to your freedom and your bliss. So the fact that you have a human birth and you have a human life, you owe it to yourself to reach for that experience. So many such things in Shakti leadership.
But there are very interesting concepts and also very beautiful, and they complement each other really well. So it's really interesting to hear about them. Connecting with what you just said, why do you think it's so important precisely to bring concepts from yoga into things like leadership?
If we were just talking leadership, I would not have looked to yoga. But if the world is looking for conscious leadership, what is conscious leadership? It's essentially discovering, who you are and learning to have mastery over who you are. Learning to master your body, your emotions, your thoughts, learning to master your interactions and how you show up, right? It's really self-mastery, and that requires a self-transformation, because until you do any kind of self-transformation practice, you'll never come to mastery, right? So yoga is a methodized approach to self-perfection, right? How do you become a better human being? How do you manifest all your true potential? And how do you know who you are, all the parts of yourself, and how do you know how to organize them around your center? How do you show up with presence? How do you show up in a way that is not schizoid or fractured, but actually gathered and integrated? And that, to be honest, I don't know any better way than yoga. It's like all you do is get on a mat and you think you're stretching and breathing, but the person who begins the yoga practice and the person who ends the yoga practice are two different people. Anyone who's really done a good yoga class knows this. And what do? You get mastery over your body. It becomes fit, firm, flexible. You get mastery over your breath, pranayam. Breath is emotion, so you learn how to be emotionally stable. With the yoga nidra at the end that happens, even the visualizations or the mantras that you may want to practice, your mind becomes controlled, right? So then you open your heart to love, to bhakti, to a sense of something bigger that you can be in loving relationship with, a sense of the divine that you want to have a reciprocal loving relationship with. So your heart opens. You become a more compassionate person towards all life, right? All these are leadership things, right? I mean, we need all of this to be a good leader. So I think if I had to call the book Shakti Leadership by any other name, I would have called it The Yoga of Leadership. Like the book The Tao of Physics.
Yeah.
But about the book, in your book you mentioned that there are just 3 workers in US that are really engaged with their work. In the second principle you mentioned, after Dharma, you told us that it is related to work also.
Artha, yes.
Artha, yes. What would you say to those people who are not really engaged with their work? They can follow the path, the adequate path, the correct path to find the correct work, their own purpose in its own life.
So one of the things we start by saying is, if you can't love what you have, if you can't have what you love, then love what you have. Okay? So do the work of finding your purpose and then start finding ways to live your purpose. Like, it's taken me so many years to get so congruent with who I am and how I'm showing up in the world, and I'm following my bliss. And right, if you can't follow your bliss, follow your heartbreak. What is out there in the world that breaks your heart? Andrew Harvey talks about it, like, because there you will find some meaning and purpose to show up at work and feel engaged with what you're doing. If you can't get there, then learn to fully surrender wholeheartedly to what you have and give it your best, right? The truth is, if you choose what you are working for and with, instead of feel like a unwilling person dragged through it every day, if you choose it, even cleaning this table can become the most glorious experience, right? Attitude is everything. So this is called karma yoga. There are many ways to do yoga. One of them is karma yoga, which is whatever is your work, do it as if it's a prayer. Do it as if it's something you're doing for the divine. Do it as if you're doing it something for the most beloved being you can think of. It's your act of love for that beloved, right? And that changes everything. So I'll give you a small example. When I was doing my yoga teacher training, it was a big class of 100 of us, and we were up in the hills in Canada, in Valmorin. And in the first day, all of us were given 1 hour of karma yoga. Everyone has to spend 1 hour doing some work, unpaid work, for that ashram. My friends were given, you shall dust the altar, you shall make the flower garlands for the deity. I waited for my turn. I was given cleaning 20 toilets every day. Okay? Every day for 1 month, 1 hour to clean 20 toilets. You'd be surprised how many yogis and yoginis do not flush their toilet after having used it, right? So, but this was to me the ultimate gift from my guru, whose course I'm studying as a Shivananda yoga teacher. I could see him smiling from his pictures in the walls, saying, I've given you something good. Because if you can clean those toilets every day with an attitude of, I'm doing this as my selfless service, I'm doing this as my act of love, and I'm doing this for the community, it's the perfect way to dissolve your ego. Because, with God's grace, I come from a fairly privileged, well-off family. I have enough helpers who can clean toilets and do everything else and put food on the table for me, and I don't have to do any of this with God's grace. But sure enough, when I go to become a yoga teacher, I have to clean toilets, because it's the best way to dissolve your sense of your superiority complex or even your inferiority complex. You just have to go past it all, and you say, this is how I just become purely human, and I submit myself to clean the best toilet I can, and not do a rush job, So, yeah, that's the attitude. If you can't have what you love, then love what you have.
Okay, thank you. Going back one step to those worldviews, those different concepts, how this idea of relating the concept to different worldviews arise?
That's a great question again. From childhood, I've been an integral thinker. I have always wanted to move towards unifying the world and achieving unity consciousness. It's just something I feel called to be a part of. And then I came to the integral yoga of Sri Aurobindo and the mother, who are great masters from India. And they say, go out there and try the true traditions from all cultures. No one's stopping you to taste the truth, because the truth comes in many forms, right? Or as they say, many paths, one mountain, right? So go climb all those paths, find all the different views, because ultimately, if they are all the true paths, they will reach you to the same place. Given that the world is so fractured over religion, for me, it became very clear that I want to go taste the essence and the truth of all these different religions. So I practice Sufism, I have whirled like a dervish, I have done their tariqas, I've talked in gibberish, and I have great fun doing that. I have done the Buddhist practices of Metta and Tonglen, and I totally adore those practices. From Christianity, practicing unconditional love and forgiveness, the Sacred Heart meditation. I love Jesus. I love that whole path. Hinduism, which is what I was born into, even though my parents are very secular. My dad's a naval officer. We never knew our caste. We never knew our religion. It was just, you're Indians, and this is, you be the best Indian you can be and serve the world the best you can, and be the best you can be, basically. So, discovering yoga for myself, and then finding the gods and the goddesses and discovering the archetypes they represent, right? And understanding that it's such a deep and rich cosmology and archetypal psychology, there is just so much sitting there. And as a student of, Joseph Campbell and, an ardent reader of Carl Jung, I'm now able to look at Hinduism itself and the 33,000 deities or however many there are. I'm able to understand what they represent, right? That ultimately there is only oneness, okay? But that one has many roles and functions and therefore expresses itself in many ways. So the need to do interfaith work and help different people from different faiths come together and share the beauty and the truth of their path with each other, so that together we can create a greater whole, is something that has always called me. And there's a mythology to this. I think it comes from the Native Americans and maybe other traditions as well, that apparently there was a time where the divine was just one, but it wanted to experience all possibilities within itself. And so it kind of carved up these different root races to say, each one of you go and figure out this piece, right? So I think, Judaism was given this job of, you shall have fidelity to God, Islam was given that you shall find the brotherhood of man, and Christianity was told you shall discover unconditional love and forgiveness of your fellow creatures. Buddhism was given, karuna and compassion at all times. Hinduism was like all is one, Brahman. So Sikhism was given kar seva, just serve your fellow beings with a selfless, egoless state, serve others. And then it's as if the dismembered Godhead became specialized in all these different ways, so that today we can integrate all those pieces back together and remember the dismembered one. So we kind of remember the face of God and see the face of the beloved, because that is how the potential became manifest as a whole, by becoming different parts, manifesting the different parts. And now we, like a pieces of puzzle, we have to now put all these truths together to create a greater wholesome truth, which I think will finally solve the problems of our time.
Okay, thank you.
Wow, yeah, that was like really eye-opening. Actually, that explanation. I had thought about the fact that like Shakti and this whole concept and ideology kind of brings together religions, but the way you put it, it makes a lot of sense, right? And I think it would be best for humanity to think about it that way, because it is that way, right? Like religions do share one same common like goal, which is this like divine purpose, right?
Yes.
But going back to earlier that you were talking about divine energies, masculine and feminine, we were kind of curious about how that works, especially how it relates to, today we have a lot of talk about like gender expression and different genders and all that. So how does this spiritual expression of divine and feminine relate to the more like, I don't know, physical manifestations of people and social manifestations of gender?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I often see that when I teach Shakti leadership and when I show the iconography of the Ardhanarishwar, the half male, half female God, and then I explain that inside each of us, regardless of gender, we are equal parts masculine and feminine.
Yes.
Each one of us are a unique combination of that. And our job, we are free to express ourselves according to our gender and sexual orientation. That freedom is ours to express. But with that comes a responsibility, which is to achieve psychological wholeness and then be a healthy unit of community and society that we belong to. Because as long as we are in a schism inside, as long as we are broken and not put together on the inside, if we are over leveraging one and not the other, we will show up in some sort of a dysfunctional way in our community, in our society, in the workplace. And then that's irresponsible, right? We have the responsibility to be psychologically whole.
Yes.
And we get to choose how we express our healthy feminine, how we express our healthy masculine, and what is the dance between the two that is uniquely you. That you get to choose. But the responsibility to become psychologically whole is yours.
Right.
Now you can be gender fluid, you can be anything. That's freedom. That's your choice. But your responsibility is to achieve psychological wholeness. Do not be more masculine and not enough feminine. Do not be more feminine and not enough masculine. Because that imbalance will hurt your system. People around you, it'll hurt you as well on the inside. Because wholeness is health. When you're not whole, you risk being sick.
So exactly in that point, in order to be a wholeness, to get that wholeness, how should we work with feminine and masculine energy?
So this is what the book is about.
Spoiler alert.
There's a very wonderful technique called polarity mapping with Dr. Barry Johnson, and I've used it to say, how do you identify healthy feminine qualities, such as empathy and inclusion and creativity, and right? How do you identify healthy masculine qualities, such as rigor and decisiveness and courage, and right? How getting the job done, being focused, all that is healthy masculine. At the same time, catch yourself and identify what are your typical unhealthy feminine behaviors. Do you get sentimental? Do you get manipulative? Do you get needy? Do you get dependent? Do you get overly emotional? What are your unhealthy masculine qualities? Do you get aggressive? Do you get spiritually empty from time to time? Do you get judgmental? Do you get arrogant? Right? So all of us, regardless of gender, have the capacity to express feminine in a healthy way and in an unhealthy way. Masculine in a healthy way and in an unhealthy way. So you have to identify when you're becoming unhealthy. Identify your early warning. And once you know that, you've got to take the action step to rebalance with the healthy aspect of the other. Right? So for example, if I become too feminine and I lose balance with the masculine, I fall below the line and I become very needy, emotionally needy. Now I know I have to take an action step to become healthy masculine to return balance. It's like hot and cold running water. Too much of one, you balance by putting more of the other. Right? So I take the action step of self-care. Self-care is an excellent masculine capacity. I'm good at that. So that's how I go back to balance. If I become too masculine and I forget the feminine, I fall below the line, I become arrogant, I become a bit judgmental, I start seeing weakness and faults in everybody, I feel superior to everyone. Now I know that's my action, that's my early warning that I have become hyper masculine. So I have to insert pause, move across the board and do something that is returning me to healthy feminine. In my case, it's a capacity for compassion. I have practiced compassion, metta, loving kindness, karuna for years as a spiritual practice. So I'm good at that. It's a perfect antidote to judgment, right? So as long as I can move as an inhale and exhale between self-care and compassion, care for self and compassion for others, I remain in that balance between healthy feminine and healthy masculine.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's also very enlightening as to how to manage these energies and the relationship between this idea that you can express yourself in whichever way, but inside you have to maintain the balance, right?
Yes.
Between both energies, and that's the key to being whole and responsible with society.
Yes.
Right?
In fact, that is our element called flexibility. That once you're psychologically whole, now you need to flex situationally. A situation may demand that you be more masculine,
right?
Or it demands you may be more feminine. That's fine. Go ahead in that moment. Express that. But then always return to your balance and your wholeness.
Okay.
Don't be stuck in one behavior.
Right. So, going back to the idea of leadership that we keep coming back to throughout the conversation, and taking this into consideration, the spirituality of Shakti and divine energies, why do you think today in our social, economical, religious context of the modern world, it is more important than ever to create conscious leaders?
If you see the problems out there, whether right now we have the war in Ukraine and we have the war in Israel, and all these somewhere have to do with power, fight for either resources or ideology.
Yes.
Right? Typically, it is also a war of civilizations. It's ideologies.
Yes.
One trying to overpower another. And we need conscious leadership. We need leadership that is more inclusive and expansive, that knows how to hold all truths, right? So that is why we need something like an inclusive leadership model like what Shakti is offering. And at a bare minimum, we need to know things have a more masculine orientation or things have a more feminine orientation, the yin and the yang. And so whatever is a solution we find, it has to have a balance of this. Otherwise, it'll not be a sustainable solution. So I don't know if that answers your question. Okay.
It does.
Okay.
And when can you have become a conscious leader? And does the process ever end?
Are you asking me personally or you're asking generally? When do you become a conscious leader?
Personally, perhaps.
Personally. I think think about unconscious and conscious as a spectrum, right? So maybe before I came to yoga, maybe I was, 10% conscious and 90% unconscious. And this was the year 1998, right? When I had my existential crisis. And I started questioning, who am I? What am I doing with my life? I'm earning a big fat paycheck, but my life feels meaningless. I don't feel I'm making an impact. What difference am I doing for the world? So that journey began. So I realized I'd need to know much more to fulfill my potential. And so then the study of yoga and Vedanta and integrative medicine and all this began after that, including my husband's journey through colon cancer and recovery from that, which all added to the growth in consciousness and the growth in leadership, right? So I changed my lifestyle completely, became much more healthier. I worked on all my relationships. I made sure very little lies unforgiven in my system. All these principles of love, accept, forgive, and let go, which are common to all paths to become more conscious, more healed, more whole. You've got to put in the work, physically, emotionally, mentally, relationally, spiritually. So I've been putting in the work on cleaning out all these aspects of myself, I would say since the year 1998. So it's now 25 years.
Yeah.
And I would say I am much more conscious than I am unconscious. Definitely I would say, I think I would hazard it's more than 50% conscious and less than 50% unconscious. Okay, that thing I will grant myself after 25 years of putting in the practice and the work. But does it ever end? That's a great question. I think, thank God, it never ends. Even once you achieve so-called enlightenment, where you see the truth of everything, there are many further realms to grow and expand into in terms of consciousness. So, it's infinite. Consciousness is infinite, and you can keep growing and expanding your consciousness. But currently, we are all going from unconsciousness to a little bit consciousness, right? A day comes where you are more conscious than unconscious. And then from there, you continue growing that conscious part of yourself. It's a never-ending story.
Yeah, that also makes a lot of sense because, we were just wondering that because since in your books and in your talks you talk about a process and that has a certain amount of steps. But when I understood it, when I heard you talking, I always understood it almost like a circle, right? That you keep coming back to, and you keep having to come back to look at those concepts and be like, what am I doing? Am I doing it correctly?
Yes.
And improve.
It's a spiral.
Yeah.
Okay, so you think you've come full circle, but that's when you have to bump up to the next level.
Right. Yeah.
And then the next circle is a wider circle than the one below.
Yeah.
So think of it like a ever expanding spiral.
Yeah. That makes so much sense. And also, my mom actually tells that to me all the time when I'm feeling like sad. She's like, if you think you're taking a step back, it's a circle and you're just going back, but you're actually going up. So It's a spiral. So that makes so much sense. And I was like, oh, wow. So now we're going to, what?
We have a chance just to one more question.
Just one more question.
So I think we can mix the 12th and the 13th.
Right, okay. This question's a bit more like maybe political. I don't know. We wanted to get into the nitty-gritty of it, but we wanted to ask you, how do you relate the concepts of Shakti with capitalism? What are your views on capitalism? How do you think it can be healed, perhaps, or transformed through Shakti, and into a conscious capitalism without falling into incongruences or the failures, so to speak, of the past?
That's a great question. I will say that my knowledge and expertise is more on the Shakti side and the yoga side. I take capitalism at face value. I do not know the great depths, and I just think of it as business, and if it's conscious capitalism, it can be business for good, right? At that level, I accept the concept. I know at a deeper level there are all kinds of narratives and there are lots of people who are really anti-capitalism. So for me, I'm not wedded to the word capitalism. I understand the value of business,
Right.
and I feel it brings value to society. That I believe good business and business leaders can be like merchant priests and priestesses. That we can do it in a way that is karma yoga, right? We can do it as a way to serve society and create profit that is shared with everybody, so we can create livelihoods, we can raise society, business can be a force for good. And then if you bring Shakti as the kind of power you are exercising to be a business leader, then your chances of creating a healthy, conscious company are much higher.
Right.
Because you're part of a larger ecosystem, you're part of society, you're part of nature as a business. And that it's Shakti which is moving through you. That money is Shakti. So for example, the divine feminine has many aspects, and Lakshmi is one of them, right? Lakshmi is the goddess of wealth and abundance and harmony, and we are encouraged to worship and have relationship with Lakshmi, because wherever there is Vishnu, which is the masculine counterpart, which is the archetypal masculine energy that preserves life, it needs money. So the Shakti of Vishnu is Lakshmi, right? If Vishnu is the preserver, then his consort, his partner, his Shakti is Lakshmi, which is the resources needed to preserve life.
Right.
So there's nothing wrong with money. It needs to be generated, it needs to be earned in fair ways, and that's what is fuel for society and systems. The problem is when greed gets into it, and when it gets used in an unconscious, inequitable way, right? That's when it gets abused. But by itself, money and business are not bad. In fact, they are necessary. They are wonderful tools.
Yes.
Okay, I'm so sorry, but our time has ended. I'm so really sorry.
We're having such a wonderful conversation.
Yes, I agree. I totally agree. But it has been a great pleasure to have with us, and also you, Andrea. So, do you want to say something else?
No, it was just an honor to talk to you and be enlightened in a small way to all these viewpoints and ideas. I think a lot of them resonated with me. They made sense. I've also taken yoga classes, so I was reflecting upon them when you were talking about how yoga is, for me, it was not just exercise or connecting with my body. It was almost like therapy.
Yes.
And it made a lot of sense after that. And I think it's really important to hear these sort of ideologies, philosophies, narratives, because I feel like as a young person living in the 21st century, we're living in a bit of a crisis, spiritually, economically. That's why we were also asking you about capitalism, right? Because there's a lot of young people that are in disbelief with the system, and we're looking for ways to rethink that and heal it. And I think Shakti is a great opportunity for that, and it just made a lot of sense. So thank you so much for being here and talking to us about that.
I loved the conversation, and I'm delighted that young people like you, Andrea, are so thoughtful and open to new ideas. There's hope if the future has young people leading it.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us, and see you later. Muchas gracias por su generosa atención y nos encontramos en nuestra próxima emisión de su podcast Atrévete a Saber. ¿Y tú, te atreves?